Earth had never felt more peaceful. The global population, united under a single cause, progress, had forged a world that seemed immune to the uncertainties of the past. Climate change had been tackled with groundbreaking technology. Space exploration had progressed beyond anyone's wildest dreams, and world hunger had been almost entirely eradicated thanks to advancements in food production. The people of Earth, while not naive, had grown accustomed to the idea that they were in control of their destiny. In a high-tech laboratory in Geneva, Dr. Amelia Quinn, one of the world's leading astrophysicists, sat hunched over a series of monitors. She frowned as a strange anomaly appeared on her radar, a burst of irregular radio waves emanating from the edge of the solar system. At first, she dismissed it as cosmic interference, a mere blip in the vast expanse of space. But there was something peculiar about the signal structure. It wasn't random noise. It seemed too precise, almost deliberate. Dr. Quinn ran the signal through the decoding program, but what emerged was both baffling and chilling. Prepare for what you cannot fathom. A shiver ran down her spine as she stared at the words. The phrase echoed in her mind, its meaning vague, yet heavy with a sense of foreboding. Her gut told her this wasn't a simple miscommunication from deep space. Someone, or something, was trying to get Earth's attention. She immediately flagged the signal to the United Nations Space Command, hoping it was just a glitch. But a quiet voice inside her whispered that it was something far more ominous. Meanwhile, in the bustling city of New York, at the heart of a vibrant and confident world, life carried on as usual. News feeds were filled with stories about the latest tech gadgets, international peace efforts, and Mars exploration missions. The global economy was strong, and the biggest fears of the day were centered around minor political disagreements and the usual debates on social issues. The thought that something beyond Earth might pose a threat to the peaceful civilization was an afterthought, a relic of outdated science fiction. The general population had little reason to believe otherwise, but a select few weren't so sure. Behind closed doors, a small group of high-ranking officials and military leaders began to question the true nature of the signal. With growing concern, they wondered whether Earth's golden age had perhaps made them vulnerable in ways they never expected. The idea of alien life, once a matter of curiosity, was now becoming a frightening reality. But for the majority of Earth's population, the signal was nothing more than a fleeting curiosity. No one realized that, just beyond the stars, an alien race was preparing to descend on Earth, intent on seizing everything humanity had built. As the world continued its dance of daily life, the Xerics were already on their way, and by the time humanity noticed, it would be too late. The silence of space was shattered when the Xerics fleet finally breached the atmosphere. For a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. At first, it was only a glimmer, a distant flicker against the stars, like a single star gone out of place. But within hours, that flicker grew into a blazing swarm of ships, their dark, sleek forms blotting out the sun. Panic swept across the globe as the first images of the alien fleet flooded every screen, every news outlet, and every phone. A flood of notifications bombarded the population. Massive fleet approaching Earth, unknown origin. The world watched in stunned disbelief, unable to process the sheer scale of the invasion. The ships were beyond anything humanity had ever imagined, massive and ominous, their smooth, angular surfaces gleaming with alien energy. Governments scrambled to respond. Military bases across the planet went into high alert. But the Xerics didn't wait. The ships hovered silently, impossibly still, as a voice boomed from speakers set up in every major city across the globe. "We are the Xerics. Surrender or perish." The message was simple, cold, and final. The message was also unmistakably clear. Humanity was not prepared for what was coming. A ripple of shock and disbelief ran through the streets. In New York, people poured into the streets in chaos, unsure whether to flee, fight, or simply cower. Governments held emergency sessions, but the truth was grim. The world's military arsenal, Its most sophisticated defenses were no match for the power the Xerix wielded. Satellites scrambled to track the invaders, but the alien ships moved faster than anything human technology could comprehend, phasing in and out of visibility, bending light around them like ghosts. Dr. Amelia Quinn, still working late in Geneva, watched in horror as the news broke. Her mind raced back to the cryptic message, the one she had dismissed earlier as mere coincidence. Now, with the invasion unfolding before her eyes, she could feel it. A realization that everything had changed. As the first alien ships began to deploy their ground forces, humanity's feeble attempts to defend itself fell apart. Tanks and fighter jets fired at the invaders, but their weapons bounced off the alien armor like rain off a glass window. Xerix soldiers, descending from their ships with terrifying precision, began to deploy high-tech weapons that instantly neutralized anything in their path. Massive energy beams vaporized cities in seconds, while armored ground troops moved swiftly through urban centers, methodically crushing any resistance. Desperation began to set in as military commanders gave orders to retreat, but there was no safe place. There was nowhere to run. The world had never felt so fragile. Then came the second wave. Massive ground shockwaves rattled buildings as the Xerix unleashed their ultimate weapon. Towering mechanical behemoths, hundreds of feet tall, each equipped with energy cannons capable of erasing entire neighborhoods. These machines advanced relentlessly, and any human attempts to engage them were crushed beneath their overwhelming power. Meanwhile, global leaders huddled together in secret bunkers, formulating a plan for Earth's survival. But time was running out. With each passing hour, more cities fell, and humanity's hope dwindled. The Xerix had made one thing clear. Earth would either bow before them or cease to exist. And amidst this destruction, no one had yet realized that the greatest weapon Earth possessed was not its armies, but something far more unexpected, and potentially its only chance for survival. The world was in chaos. Cities burned under the Xerix assault, and the cries of desperate civilians echoed across the globe. Earth's defenses had been shattered, its military forces crushed under the relentless advance of alien technology. Leaders scrambled to make sense of the invasion, but every plan seemed futile against such overwhelming power. Humanity, once proud and confident, was now a cornered animal, desperately trying to fight off an enemy it couldn't even comprehend. But deep within the world's most secretive bunkers, away from the eyes of the public and the invading force, a different kind of resistance was quietly taking shape. Project Rebirth had been designed as a last resort measure, a contingency plan to protect humanity in the event of an existential threat. Conceived decades earlier, it was based on the knowledge that humanity possessed far greater potential than anyone knew. Early theorists had speculated that humans had dormant genetic abilities, traits locked away in the human genome that, if triggered, could elevate the species beyond its current limitations. The idea was dismissed as pseudoscience, a relic of ancient myths and conspiracy theories. But those who believed in it had worked in the shadows, hidden from the public eye, building the foundation for humanity's secret weapon. Dr. Amelia Quinn, now in a secure underground lab with a group of geneticists and military strategists, was the first to be told of Project Rebirth's existence. She had been selected not just for her scientific brilliance, but for her understanding of what this moment in history could mean. "Dr. Quinn," a voice crackled over the comms, "we need you here." She nodded, stepping away from the observation window, where she had been watching the destruction unfold outside. The faint glow of distant fires lit the night sky above the shattered city. Her heart sank, but there was no time for sorrow now. Humanity's survival depended on what they could unlock next. In the lab, a team of scientists worked tirelessly, unlocking humanity's latent evolutionary potential. For centuries, the human race had lived in ignorance of the ancient genetic traits that lay dormant within them. Traits tied to primal abilities that had been passed down since the earliest days of human existence. Telepathic communication, enhanced strength, rapid healing, even energy manipulation. Abilities that once seemed fantastical were now being awakened. The process was risky. The tests had not been fully perfected, and there were fears that not all subjects would survive the transformation. But time was of the essence. Desperation had become a powerful motivator. The first successful candidates were human volunteers, soldiers and civilians alike, eager to fight back against the alien invaders, willing to undergo the painful procedure in the hopes that they could change the course of history. The results were nothing short of astonishing. Within days, the first group of enhanced humans, dubbed Evolves, had begun to demonstrate remarkable abilities. Some could heal wounds in a matter of minutes, while others displayed superhuman strength, lifting vehicles with ease. A few were able to manipulate energy fields, deflecting incoming alien fire or bending light to cloak themselves from detection. Yet even these initial successes came at a cost. The transformations were not without side effects: intense pain, unpredictable side effects, and in some cases, catastrophic failure. But the hope was undeniable. Humanity was evolving, adapting, and growing more powerful by the hour. The first group of Evolves, now ready for battle, would face the Xerix onslaught head-on. The world's hope now rested on this hidden weapon, a force that would challenge the very laws of nature. But no one could predict how the Xerix would respond to such an unexpected enemy. As the world watched, the first battle between humanity's new champions and the Xerix began, an event that would change the course of history forever. As the first of the Evolves stepped into the battlefield, the air seemed to crackle with anticipation. Humanity's desperation had given birth to a new breed of soldier, one who was not bound by the limitations of the human body. No longer did the alien invaders face mere men and women with rifles. They were now confronted by individuals with extraordinary abilities, each one capable of feats that seemed impossible only days before. The first successful team of Evolves, now led by Captain Ilias Monroe, a seasoned military strategist, moved swiftly across the battlefield. Monroe, once an average soldier, now wielded strength far beyond any normal human. His reflexes were honed to an almost superhuman degree, and his mind worked in perfect synchrony with his body. Alongside him, Lieutenant Zora Chen, who had gained the ability to manipulate energy fields, formed a shield that deflected Xerix plasma blasts, saving entire squads of humans. Sergeant David Cruz, once a medic, now possessed the power to heal wounds almost instantly, bringing fallen soldiers back into the fight with a mere touch. The Xerix, initially confident in their superiority, had never anticipated such a rapid change. Their advanced technology and destructive weapons were formidable, but humanity's evolution had introduced an entirely new paradigm. What once seemed like myth, the idea of humans bending the fabric of reality, was becoming an undeniable reality on the battlefield. In one key battle in Paris, the Evolves led a counterattack against a Xerix ground unit that had been systematically destroying the city. The humans, with their newfound powers, launched an assault that was as much psychological as it was physical. Monroe led a small group of Evolves deep into the heart of the Xerix forces. As they approached, the Xerix seemed almost confused. They were used to facing humans with their predictable tactics: defense, retreat, regroup. But now, they were facing an entirely different kind of warfare. The Evolves attacked with precision and speed. Monroe leaped from rooftop to rooftop, closing in on a massive Xerix war machine. With one powerful blow, he brought it to its knees, shattering the alien armor with his enhanced strength. Meanwhile, Chen created a swirling vortex of energy that sent multiple Xerix soldiers flying back, incapacitating them in a single strike. The battle was fierce, but the tide had already turned. The Xerix began to lose ground in every city they tried to take. Humanity's adaptability had given them an edge the Xerix could not foresee. Even as the aliens scrambled to launch counteroffensives, they struggled to understand the nature of their new enemies. They had believed the humans to be weak, unworthy of their attention. Now, The Xerics were learning the hard way that humanity had never been as weak as it appeared. Back in the underground laboratories, the geneticists worked feverishly to improve the formula that created the evolves. But it wasn't just about power. The process was about balance. Too much alteration could lead to uncontrollable mutations, or worse, complete mental breakdowns. They needed to refine the procedure, and fast, as the Xerics were beginning to adapt in ways that were difficult to counter. Meanwhile, the world began to watch as humanity's champions emerged from the shadows. The evolves became symbols of hope, heroes in a time of darkness. And as the first victories mounted, the people of Earth began to rally behind them, ready to fight back with everything they had. The Xerics, however, were not about to give up their conquests so easily. They had underestimated humanity once. Now they were preparing for their next move, a move that would test the very limits of human evolution. The tide was shifting, and the Xerics were beginning to panic. For the first time since the invasion began, the alien forces found themselves on the defensive. Their once unassailable war machines were now being sabotaged and destroyed by humanity's evolving powers. The ground forces, too, were being pushed back. What had once been a nearly flawless strategy was now faltering under the weight of an unforeseen enemy, humans with abilities that defied reason. In the command center of the Xerics flagship, high above Earth's atmosphere, the mood was far from triumphant. Commander Viner, the leader of the Xerics forces, paced in his war room, his many eyes flickering nervously across the holographic displays of battle reports. His species had conquered countless worlds, each one bending to their will with ease. Earth was supposed to be no different. But now, the humans were proving to be something else entirely. Their speed, their ingenuity, their ability to adapt. Viner had miscalculated. The evolves had turned the battlefield into a nightmare for the Xerics, and despite their technological superiority, the aliens found themselves overwhelmed by sheer unpredictability. We underestimated them. Viner muttered under his breath, his voice thick with frustration. He turned to his tactical officers. Deploy the Zorith Elite. Prepare the Exterminator class machines. We must crush them before they realize their full potential. The Zorith Elite were the Xerics' most lethal warriors, genetically modified soldiers who had been bred for one purpose: to destroy. They were faster, stronger, and more ruthless than any of their standard troops. And the Exterminator class machines were even more terrifying. Towering, monstrous creations designed to decimate entire cities, their energy cannons could level anything in their path. The Xerics had kept these weapons in reserve, but now they were humanity's final challenge. While the Xerics plotted their next move, a growing resistance was forming among Earth's populations. The evolves had become symbols of hope, and their success in repelling the Xerics was being broadcast to every corner of the world. What was once a fractured, frightened humanity was now united, emboldened by the possibility of victory. However, within the ranks of the evolves, uncertainty began to stir. The transformations were not without their tolls. While many of the new human warriors had shown extraordinary strength and resilience, there were whispers of side effects: psychological instability, uncontrollable bursts of power, and even some individuals losing their humanity in the process. Captain Elias Monroe had seen the changes firsthand. The power coursing through his veins was intoxicating, but it came at a price. He could feel his mind slipping from the person he once was, the once solid lines between right and wrong becoming increasingly blurry. It was a constant struggle to remain grounded. And yet, the stakes were too high for him to back down. The war wasn't just about defeating the Xerics, it was about preserving everything humanity had built. But as the Xerics prepared their counterstrike, the growing fear among their ranks only heightened their desperation. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Now they were facing a force that they had no means of controlling, a force that might very well turn the tables on their centuries-long campaign of domination. And Earth's champions, the evolves, were about to show them that humanity's hidden strength was more than just a weapon. It was the key to their survival. The sky over New York was alive with the hum of alien ships and the crackle of energy weapons. The Xerics had brought everything to bear, an overwhelming display of technological might. But Earth wasn't giving up without a fight. The Evolves had gathered at the front lines, preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of humanity. Captain Ilias Monroe stood at the head of the human forces, his jaw clenched as he surveyed the battlefield. His enhanced senses detected the movement of Xeric soldiers in the distance, their silhouettes dark against the smoldering remains of the city. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to unfold. He was no longer just a soldier. He was humanity's last hope. Beside him stood Lieutenant Zara Chen, her energy field ready to deflect incoming fire. She glanced at Monroe, her face tense. "We can't let them get through. If they breach our defenses, this city, this whole world, will fall." Monroe nodded, his expression hardening. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for the future. And we won't lose." In the distance, the massive Zorath elite soldiers began to advance, their hulking forms casting long shadows over the ruins of the city. Each step shook the ground beneath them, their weapons primed for destruction. The Exterminator-class machines, towering behemoths with massive energy cannons mounted on their shoulders, followed behind. Their eyes glowed with an unholy light, signaling the beginning of humanity's final battle. As the Xerics closed in, the Evolves sprang into action. Monroe led the charge, his enhanced strength allowing him to leap across the battlefield in a single bound. He smashed into the nearest Zorath elite, his fists crashing through alien armor like paper. But the Xeric soldiers were relentless, their speed and combat prowess a deadly match for his abilities. Chen, focused and calm, projected a massive energy shield that absorbed the barrage of plasma fire from the approaching Xerics. The shield flickered but held strong, protecting the humans behind her. Her powers were being tested to the limit, but she refused to let up. This was the moment. Meanwhile, Sergeant David Cruz was working furiously to keep the human forces in the fight. His healing powers were stretched thin, rushing from one wounded soldier to another, mending wounds that would have been fatal with just a touch. But even his extraordinary abilities couldn't keep up with the carnage. The battle was escalating, and the Xerics were proving to be far more dangerous than they had ever been before. Then came the shockwave. From the heart of the battlefield, one of the Exterminator-class machines fired its energy cannon, sending a blinding beam of light into the sky. The explosion sent a ripple through the air, knocking humans off their feet. Buildings crumbled. Ground soldiers were vaporized in an instant. Monroe gritted his teeth. They couldn't hold out much longer. He glanced at his team, his family. There was no way to stop this without making the ultimate sacrifice. But he wasn't about to let humanity fall. He made a decision. "We go in together," he shouted to his team. "We take out the leader. It's our only chance." With no time to waste, the Evolves charged forward, toward the heart of the enemy lines. The final stand had begun. The battle raged on, an inferno of destruction that shook the very foundations of Earth. The Exterminator-class machines continued to fire their devastating energy blasts, each explosion a devastating reminder of the stakes humanity now faced. Yet despite the chaos, the Evolves pressed forward, determined to end the Xerics invasion once and for all. Captain Ilias Monroe's eyes narrowed as he led his team deeper into the heart of the Xerics forces. Every instinct screamed at him to stay focused. He could feel the weight of his decision. The choice to push directly into the heart of the enemy's strongest defenses. But it was the only way to end the war. Monroe's enhanced senses allowed him to track the movements of the Xerics commanders, the ones orchestrating the invasion from behind the front lines. They were strategically positioned, just beyond the thickest part of the battle. A sudden surge of adrenaline coursed through his veins, propelling him forward with a speed and precision that left his enemy scrambling. He was almost there. Beside him, Zara Chen was holding her ground, her energy shield flickering as she absorbed blast after blast from the advancing Xyrix forces. Her face was grim, sweat dripping from her brow as she focused all her energy into keeping the team protected. "We're almost through, Elias," she called out, her voice strained. "We can't let up now. They're going to notice us soon." Monroe gave a single nod, his eyes locked on the distant figures of the Xyrix commanders. He could see them now. Tall, imposing figures with armor that shimmered like liquid metal, their weapons crackling with unimaginable power. They were the leaders, the ones who had orchestrated Earth's near destruction. And they would be the ones to fall. Suddenly, a shadow fell over him. One of the Exterminator-class machines, its massive form bearing down upon them, aimed its energy cannon directly at the Evolves. The ground shook beneath their feet as the weapon powered up, the barrel glowing with a deadly light. Time seemed to slow. In an instant, Monroe calculated the trajectory. With a primal roar, he launched himself into the air, narrowly avoiding the blast that erupted beneath him. The shockwave from the explosion sent him tumbling through the air, but his enhanced body absorbed the impact. He landed hard, barely catching his breath before pushing forward again. "Cover me," Monroe shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Chen immediately sprang into action, creating a protective bubble of energy around Monroe as he continued his assault. She had only moments before her powers would be drained completely, but she wasn't going to let her team fall now. Not when victory was within reach. Monroe's heart pounded as he closed the distance to the Xyrix commanders. Their cold, alien faces turned toward him, and for the first time since the invasion began, Monroe saw fear in their eyes. They had underestimated humanity's potential. Now, they were realizing just how dangerous Earth's champions had become. Without hesitation, Monroe lunged forward, smashing through the ranks of Xyrix soldiers with one blow after another. The Xyrix commanders began to move, their weapons sparking with deadly energy. The final confrontation was imminent. He had only one goal now: to end the war, to crush the Xyrix leadership before they could unleash any more devastation. And as the Evolve stormed the Xyrix command center, the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The tide was shifting. The Xyrix command center was a towering structure of alien design, its walls pulsing with a strange, otherworldly energy. It stood in the heart of New York, now reduced to a city of ruins. The once majestic skyline was broken and battered, with only a handful of structures still standing. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning rubble. Yet amidst this destruction, the Evolves charged forward, unstoppable in their mission. Captain Elias Monroe led the charge, his enhanced speed pushing him ahead of the others. He could hear the crackle of energy blasts behind him as his team battled through the remaining Xyrix soldiers. His heart was pounding in his chest, but there was no time for doubt now. They were so close. All of humanity's hope rested on the fall of the Xyrix leadership. Monroe reached the entrance of the command center, a massive door made of an unknown metal that shimmered in the dim light. The Xyrix soldiers stationed outside barely had time to react before Monroe smashed through the door, his fist punching a hole clean through the reinforced material. The rest of the Evolves were right behind him, each of them using their unique abilities to push forward, eliminating any remaining resistance. Inside, the Xyrix commanders were waiting. There were 3 of them, tall, alien beings encased in sleek armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their eyes glowed with an unsettling intelligence, and the air in the room felt heavy with their presence. These were the beings who had masterminded the invasion, who had believed themselves invincible. But Monroe could see the fear in their eyes now. The Xyrix had miscalculated. They had underestimated humanity. "End this," Monroe growled, his voice filled with determination. "You're done." The commander's weapons powered up with a hum, but before they could react, Monroe and the Evolves were upon them. Zara Chen raised her hands, creating a shimmering barrier of energy that deflected the first wave of plasma blasts aimed at them. Sergeant David Cruz, despite his exhaustion, rushed to the front, his healing powers still a vital asset. He'd patched up countless soldiers, but now his power was focused on ensuring his teammates stayed in the fight. The battle inside the command center was a blur of flashing lights, crackling energy, and brutal force. Monroe fought with the strength of 1,000 men, each blow landing with the precision of a seasoned warrior. He knew this moment was pivotal, not just for Earth, but for the future of his species. The Xerix had shown no mercy. Now, it was their turn. One of the Xerix commanders raised an energy blade, its surface crackling with lethal energy. With a roar, Monroe collided with the commander, their weapons locking in a fierce clash. The Xerix commander was powerful, but Monroe was faster, stronger. With one final, decisive strike, Monroe shattered the alien's weapon and slammed his fist into its chest. The commander crumpled to the ground. The remaining Xerix commanders tried to regroup, but they were no match for the combined strength of the Evolves. Chen, using her powers to manipulate energy, surged forward and unleashed a massive wave of energy, sending the last commander flying against the wall with bone-crushing force. The battle was over. The Xerix had been defeated. Outside, the remnants of the Xerix fleet began to retreat, their ships fleeing Earth's atmosphere, abandoning their fallen comrades. The war was won. As Monroe stood over the fallen Xerix commanders, he allowed himself a moment to breathe. They had done it. Humanity had faced an impossible enemy and emerged victorious. The Evolves, once regarded as a hidden hope, had become the cornerstone of humanity's survival. But this victory came at a price. The battle had taken its toll on them all. Monroe, bruised and battered, looked at his team, each of them heroes in their own right. They had fought not just for survival, but for a future. "Earth is ours again," Monroe said, his voice hoarse, but filled with pride. And as the sun began to rise over the devastated city, humanity took its first step into a new era, one where they had learned their true power and resilience. The Xerix invasion was over, but the lessons learned would shape the future of humanity forever.